Okay, let's go ahead and get it going. Welcome, everyone. But before you have the agenda. Everybody should have a copy of the agenda. It's available on the website. If not, you may have a few seconds to grab it if you don't. With that, I'll go ahead and open it up to the President's report. So good morning and welcome to the California Conference of Directors of Environmental Health Annual General Meeting. My name is Jeff Limore. For those that don't know me, I am the Environmental Health Director for Imperial County. And for at least the next 60 minutes or so, the President of CCDEH. This year in review has been a challenging year due to COVID-19. I applaud you all, the state and local health officials, for their incredible work and commitment so many of you have taken on to minimize outbreaks where possible, which has undoubtedly saved lives. This is our second year having a virtual annual conference. Next year's annual conference will be in person in Tahoe, September 26th through the 30th at the Palisades, Tahoe, which, if you recall, was previously called Squaw Village. Shortly, Justin will provide an update on our organization's legislative accomplishments, and committee chairs will provide highlights on the great work they have done within their respective committees. I'd like to take a few minutes to provide you with some highlights on our 2 successful virtual training series and our ever-expanding membership. This is the second time CCDEH has provided an annual conference virtually. The 2020 virtual conference had 80 participants, and our 2021 virtual conference currently has 84 participants registered. In all, there are 25 REHS training videos posted to the website REHS to obtain contact hours. Last April, we held the first of hopefully many more to come virtual training series. We invited CCDEH to join us due to the cancellation of the 2021 AES conference. Between the 3 virtual training sessions, we had a total of 400 participants. It's been very busy virtually. I'd like to thank all of the policy committee chairs for supporting the training sessions and inviting some very informative presenters. I'd also like to thank you for your support of the organization. We have a total of 180 members, which is the largest number of members to date. We have 62 environmental health directors, 88 associate members, and 26 active retired directors. We also have 4 government, academic, and consultant members. We'd like to thank the retired directors for their participation in the upcoming onboarding video that the Professional Development Committee is working on, and all the contracting support to agencies they have provided. The current membership list is also posted on the website. I'd like to congratulate Cheryl and the Coupa Forum Board for a very successful conference. This year's Coupa conference had its first ever virtual conference, which covered a span of 7 weeks, which was covered basically February through March. There are a record-breaking 180 training videos presented by 206 speakers, all posted to calcoupa.org, offering 311 REHS contact hours and 43 ICC units, which are accessible anytime until March 18th, 2022. This year's conference experienced the largest number of participants to date, with a whopping 5,190 attendees. I would like to offer a sincere thank you to Justin and Cheryl for their hard work and endless commitment to our organization. Your dedication, enthusiasm, and insight have really inspired and it's sincerely appreciated. With that, I'll go ahead and move to the President's Award and Recognition. Our policy committee chairs, we have mailed out a gift to all of you and a thank you letter. So you should, if you have not received that, you should be receiving that here shortly. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Justin to the recognition before you right now.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks everybody for joining us. You're going to hear a little bit from me in the next half an hour or so, but we wanted to take an unusual step this session, this annual meeting, and acknowledge at least 4 of the many legislative committees. And I wanted to explain why. Usually we will honor the members or the chairs of committees, and that has been customary. For many years we've done, we've acknowledged a legislator of the year. But I thought this year that we should acknowledge the hard work done by especially these 4 committees. We do obviously work with many more committees. We work with natural resources, local government, all the appropriations committees, but these four stand out, and I believe that probably 95% of the bills that we deal with go through one or more of these four committees. They have also sponsored or carried or authored bills that KHA and CCDEH have moved through for environmental health and the Cooper program. So they've been a huge asset to us. And to explain why this is so important is that, as you know, in the beginning of the year, by March, we will see hundreds of bills introduced. And it's extraordinarily difficult to wade through those bills and identify which are of interest and of importance to local environmental health programs, because we span such a vast area of topics. There are 20 or more programs in environmental health. So they help us identify the bills. They call on us to provide our professional and program input. They often work with us to facilitate differences between us or local governments and the sponsors and the authors of the bills. And they, honestly, these four committees and the staff and the consultants have been a big part in what I calculated a few days ago to be an extraordinary 80% success rate of the bills that we have introduced for environmental health programs. The other thing that I think is very telling, and that's the support of the legislature in general, despite the little hiccups we have along the way. It has been years since we've had a bill that we flat out oppose and have asked for a veto from any of the governors. And that means that the process from our perspective is working quite well. We have an opportunity to get amendments to bills through the process, and these folks have helped. Dr. Quirk, who chairs the Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee, may have joined us or possibly would join us, but I wanted to call out those committees really quickly and start with ESTM. That's the bottom committee under California Assembly. Josh Tucker, Shannon McKinney, Paige Brokaw, the fellows that they have, these academic fellows like Marie Cannell, and of course Pia Estrada, who's the secretary of the committee, have all been invaluable. They've carried bills for us. They've worked very closely with us. And just this year, Shannon worked on 1066 with us. Paige worked on 480 with us, AB 480. Marika worked on local oversight bills. So I can't say enough of that committee, the help they've provided. The chair, Dr. Quirk, and Josh and his team, both the consultants and the staff. So we want to just give you a big shout out and thank you for that help. The companion committee on the Senate side is one that has a slightly broader scope of responsibility, the Senate Environmental Quality. They deal with the solid waste issues as well, resource recovery, and a slightly broader scope than ESTM. But Gab is here. Gabrielle Mendel has been a long friend and colleague and associate for many years and is an invaluable help, and her colleagues in that committee as well. Ben Allen from Santa Monica is the chair, so we acknowledge Ben as well. But Gab and Mimi and Eric and Genevieve all provide us with this incredible support when they work through issues with us that go to Environmental Safety Committee. So I want to give that committee a shout out as well. So thank you so much for being there and supporting us in our efforts to protect public health, safety, and the environment. And when we come to public health, I know that Roz was going to join us, but there are two absolute champions from our perspective, and we've been working with both of them, so I'll cover them really together for a long time. And if there are any two people in the state legislature that know about CalCode, it's going to be Vince Marchand from Senate Health Committee. Roz, and there's Roz. Roz Pomano from the Assembly Health Committee are the experts on CalCode and have been absolutely invaluable in working through the many, many issues, whether it's issues that we have brought to them or others have brought to the legislature, whether it's Miko's or cottage food or delivery or whatever it is, they've been there for us. And not only CalCode, any health-related issue that environmental health touches on is really handled by those two champions in the legislature, Roz and Vince. So we go back many, many years, and I just want our membership to appreciate how much they have done for us and how invaluable their assistance and guidance has been to CCDH and KHA. And of course, it wouldn't be fair not to mention their chairs. Dr. Richard Pan, who chairs the Senate Health Committee, is an absolute stalwart advocate for vaccinations, took on the anti-vaxxers years before COVID, and has been a very strong supporter of ours. And so too has Dr. Wood from Northern California, been a fantastic champion of the environment and of public health. So we are blessed to have those folks in our camp, in our corner, as it were. And as a very small recognition, we are hand delivering copies of a wonderful book done by a friend of ours, Rob Hirsch, about Yosemite. And it's printed material, so we don't have to report it to the Secretary of State. We hope you enjoy it. And when you open it up, you know why we're all fighting furiously to protect public health, safety, and the environment. So quickly, I turn it over to any one of you if you've got anything to share. I'm sorry to have to make this briefer than I'd like to. I'd like to sing your praises more. But Roz, Vince, Gab, Shannon, anybody else that's joined us, Dr. Quirk is here, so I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Quirk first to say a few words.
Well, let me say that one of the most important things is getting all the information we get from Justin Milan, and I really wanted to thank him for his hard work. And it's his efforts at letting us know what's going on with the environmental health officers that lead to better legislation. And then I particularly wanted to thank all the staff, but one person who did a fantastic job this year in particular was Paige Brokaw, who took a program that wasn't working and through legislation has gotten it to work, and that's the collection of the mercury thermostats, and collecting those and preventing them from going into landfills. So I just wanted to thank all the staff on the committee and Justin and all you folks who make this legislative effort work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cook, and we appreciate your leadership on that committee and in the legislature. We speak for all of the environmental health and public health officers, and we commend you for keeping us alive. So thank you for joining us. And if your staff, any of the consultants wish to share anything, please do so. So thank you again.
Thanks, Justin. I just want to, I appreciate all your kind words. I do want to push back. We're not the experts. We rely on you guys to be the experts. And, you know, as staff, a lot of times we're working on tight deadlines. And one of the things I've always really appreciated about this organization is how prompt in response. I'll have some technical question, shoot it out to Justin, and Justin sends it out to a number of you. And I'm always getting really fast turnaround with really good technical help. And so I'm grateful for that. And have been working with Justin for a long time, as he mentioned. And as long as I've been here in doing this, I never ever felt like an expert on this stuff. And so I've always relied on the directors and through Justin to help me do my job. So thank you.
Thank you, Vince. We appreciate you and your committee and your chair, of course.
Yeah, I would echo what Vincent said about really relying on your organization for your expertise, and just want to compliment Justin on the partnership that we have had over the years and the trust that has developed over time. You know, I never second guess anything that I get from you, and rely on you incredibly. So thank you have really enjoyed working with you for the years, and appreciate the opportunity to join you guys today. And we don't get a lot of thanks at the committee level, so it's very nice to be acknowledged. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
You deserve it. Thanks, Cam.
Hi, Justin. This is Roz. I just want to echo both my colleagues' comments about your personally Justin's attentiveness and specificity when we are asking for questions. And again, on behalf of our chair, Dr. Wood, and all of our committee staff and all of our committee members, we are grateful for your service, especially during these difficult times. I know it's been challenging, at least on the restaurant and the food court front, and so we really do appreciate all the work that you have been doing to keep us all safe. So thank you.
Thanks, Roz. And we are on such a tight schedule that I just wanted to make sure our members acknowledged the work that you do, your committees do, and as frustrated as we are sometimes with the sausage machine, I think we've got to appreciate, particularly those that aren't involved in the legislative process, how thorough it is, how important your analyses are to everybody, not just us that are engaged in the process, but the person at large in California can pull up an analysis on a complicated bill, and you, the folks that do it, you and your staff do those. So we owe you a great acknowledgement, and we'd like to do that today. So thank you all. You're welcome to stay on and listen to some of our machinations at CCDH, but I'm sure you've got more important things to do, and look forward to working with you next year as we tie up some loose ends again. But bless you all. Thank you for your support. And Dr. Quirk, thanks for your tireless work in the legislature.
Okay, thank you all, and thank you, Justin, for that. It's still keeping it with you, Justin. We're going to go ahead and move on to the Executive Director's report and then Legislative report.
Okay, great. And again, thanks all for your indulgence. We are really jamming. I wanted to spend a little bit more time on that. So I'm not going to wade through the Executive Director report. Cheryl's putting that up on a screen, and we have posted it, and I think we've emailed it to everybody. So I'm going to highlight just a few things. Jeff's mentioned it. CCDH is now a standalone 501c3. We've separated legally under the IRS and Secretary of State. These are two totally separate entities, and I think it's one of the best things we've done since the inception of CCDH 66 years ago. It means that we can operate independently. It means that KHA can actually take a stronger role in some things because we are divorced legally from your role as environmental health directors in your jurisdiction. Dues paid to KHA, so there's a greater degree of independence legally and from a perspective. We have, as Jeff mentioned, the strongest membership, and thanks to Cheryl and all the work by treasurers and the executive committee, we're in a stronger financial position that we've ever been in 66 years or 67 years. We've consolidated our resources. As Jeff mentioned, and Cheryl can attest, our training has been hugely successful, and that has enabled us to subsidize since 2012, we've kept the CEUs at $25 a pop. So that is a huge service I believe we do provide to the members of CCDH. So financially, we're in good shape. Membership, we're in good shape. We have to give Jeff and his executive committee a shout out during these difficult times when there have been lots of demands on their time in their jurisdictions. They've held the meetings. We've held the meetings every time. We've covered our business, and we've done what we have to do. We've reviewed that legislation that sometimes is difficult. We've looked at regulations. We've helped with guidance documents, and we've provided the support to you as members that I think we've become well known for. So shout out to them. Of course, Cheryl, shout out to Cheryl again, and she's got a particular recognition, not just from us, but Cheryl, why don't you pull up on the screen just so members can see that photograph of you, which I think was pretty cool. Cheryl's been with us for 22 years, and we nominated
23.
her. 23. And we nominated her for a national award of being a national meeting planner elite. And she was recognized by a National Meeting Planning Association as one of the top meeting planners in the whole of the United States. Not only for our meetings, but obviously the Cooper Conference, which is a massive endeavor and has been for many, many years. And I'm thrilled that she's got the recognition nationally, not just from us, which she does get, maybe not enough, but she gets it from us, but this is a national recognition for Cheryl for the work that she's done, especially for us in CCDEH. So thank you, Cheryl. You and Michelle have always been there for us. Again, I'm not going to touch on the program issues. We are going to have an opportunity to look at the year coming up, but there are always issues, whether it's biosolids or 1383. What we've done here is we've got 2 action plans. So refer to that because this is kind of the cliff notes of CCDEH. If you want to know what we're involved in, you can just look at the one document, 2-page document, and that's our action plan. And that is updated each year. But last year, this is the summary as of a few days ago, where we are. And without going through all of it, it's posted, you should have it in your inboxes, but that's how we keep track. And you'll see there's a vast array of issues that we are tackling through our policy committees and executive committee. And on the far right-hand column, as of last week, most of those have either been completed or they remain underway. Very few have sort of dropped by the wayside or we have failed in. I don't think there's really anything we failed in. We're still plugging away at some things, or we've completed a number of those tasks. So I want to commend the executive committee and the policy committees and the regional committees for keeping this organization strong, particularly during the difficult times. And if there's one thing I wanted to leave with you is that, particularly last year, more so last year than this year, where there was an assault on public health, there was an assault on science, there was an assault on truth. And we need to be on our guard that this assault from some sectors is still alive and kicking. And I would say that one of our most important tasks moving forward, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss this when we do our strategic planning, is how to shore up our REHS programs and our environmental health programs. And you heard from the legislative committee staffers that they rely on us 100% when it comes to getting that technical knowledge, getting that expertise to the legislature. And even if that's all that KHA and CC does, it would be a huge service to California. So I leave the executive committee report with a big thank you for all those that have participated, and also a caveat that we should remain vigilant and protect what we have built up through the REHS and the environmental health programs. I'm happy to answer any questions now or during the members section, or as always, you can ping me on my phone or send an email if there's any detail you'd like me to cover. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, thank you, Justin. Any questions, comments for Justin? Okay.
With that, is going to be even briefer because we have covered this many times, and that is the legislative report. We've written about it, we've covered it in executive committee meetings and in communiques, and Cheryl and I have put out 4 communiques. We do that every year, and the legislative report is always in that communique. But I just wanted to say that, again, as you heard earlier, this is an important role. And if we are not at the table, we are on the menu. And I don't think it's ever been more true than right now, because so much is going on, whether it's in-street, on the street food vending, whether it's COVID relief, whether it's changes in DTSC in the state. Whatever it is, local programs are impacted by hundreds of bills. So on the legislative front, I was just going to quickly summarize that we circulated about 120 bills in the beginning of this year to the policy committees. Those policy committees reviewed, and most of them tracked the bills throughout the year. That was enormously helpful. We settled on about 30 to 35 bills that we tracked actively during the year, and we took positions on most of those. Some of the bills we didn't take positions on, but most of them we did. And what was particularly important is that we were able to influence by getting amendments or by killing or stalling bills that we really, really didn't like. And I think that there were two measures of success for CCDH and KHA and the Cooper Forum Board. Is one was two of our sponsored bills, AB 831, which was the Calco cleanup. That's already been signed into law. And we're hoping that the next big bill, SB 480, dealing with imminent impact on communities from chemical facilities and other industrial facilities, we are hoping that that bill will be signed by the governor. That's been also a long process to get that through the legislature. But it is arguably one of the most impactful and one of the strongest bills I believe we've passed by CCDH and KHA in many, many years, because that bill, and this is where the support of the legislature is important, that bill gives a Cooper the authority to shut down or to cease and desist an operation that causes imminent threat to the community. It doesn't matter whether it meets a permit condition. It doesn't matter whether DTSC likes it. It doesn't matter whether the feds like it. But if a Cooper sees an Exide battery factory continuing to exude toxic fumes, releases into the community, and they work with the health officer, and at a local level we decide there's a threat to the community, if this bill is signed, we can go in and shut them down. And I will argue, when people realize the expanse and the extent of this bill, they'll realize that we've been granted through the Cooper program very, very extensive authority. It's not without, the appropriate due process and appeals, but nevertheless, this is something that I think is indicative of the support of the legislature in our ability to protect the public. And with that being said, again, I don't want to dwell on the bills. We usually have a fairly broad spread of issues. Most often, it's the Cooper and the food bills that are most demanding because there are so many of them. But again, I think we had not necessarily a perfect record because we lost some of our bills that we wanted to move this year, but we had a very, very good record in the legislature. And I want to thank all the policy committees for their extraordinary support. And it does happen when 11 o'clock at night, I get an email from Vince or Shannon or Wise and say, hey, what do you folks feel about this amendment? Or what do you feel about this bill? And invariably within 24 hours, I've got a very thoughtful and helpful response back from either the director, the chair, or the technical advisory committee. So thanks again for your support on the legislative front. And we will be reporting under KHA that success as well. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, thank you, Justin. Any questions, comments for Justin before we move on? Hearing none. All right, I'll go ahead and go to Treasurer's Report. Daryl?
Good morning, everyone. Okay, here are the highlights of our Treasury Report. CCDEH 2020 first virtual fall conference, the profit was $16,964. The CCDEH 2021 spring virtual training, which offered 8 sessions and invited CHA to join, is a profit of $23,822. CCDH's first full year publication sales, the profit was $8,108. CCDH's net profit is $48,686. CCDH took the profit from last year's fiscal year of $48,686 and put the funds into a savings account. Our total savings in CD is $87,229.30. The checking account balance is $128,758.48, and our future conference revenue deposits for 2022 and 2023 totaled $21,000. The AR balance is $12,280.26, and that's for dues, training, and job advertising. There's an increase in membership, therefore the dues has increased. And we have our first grant with the SWRCB and CCDH for the fisheries program in the amount of $380,000. And does anyone have any questions? Okay, I guess not. And I'd like to really thank Cheryl for everything she has done. Without her, if you guys depended on me to do this, your books would be all screwed up. So we'd probably be audited by the IRS by now. So you got to all thank her for everything she has done. Thanks, Cheryl. I really appreciate working with you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Daryl, for the updates there. From that, we'll go ahead and move on to policy committee reports, and we'll start with food safety. Lisa?
Good morning, everyone. And so I'll be brief. As Justin said, I do want to thank the committee. This has been a challenging year. I'm sure many of us can attest to that. But with Justin's support, we were able to get through with AB 831, introduced and signed. So thank you, Justin. We also have AB 1144, which deals with cottage food operations. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that bill has been signed. So we'll be looking to update our cottage food guidelines in this next year. We also have AB 1276 that was passed that restricts single-use accessories. I think for a lot of the jurisdictions, you're going to have to determine, who is going to be the enforcement agency behind that. Some jurisdictions may lean to environmental health. Others, it may end up being with Public Works, but I want to make sure that I flag that for all of you so that you can have those discussions. With respect to our partnership with CDPH and FDA, that continues to remain strong. CDPH does have a new food, somebody who took over Jean-Marie and Susan. And so I have to say, I'm really impressed. Susan is definitely, addressing variances, getting them over to the jurisdictions. So all of those have been posted. So I do want to thank, of course, Susan, who's really being actively involved. And Jane did reach out from CDPH to really engage on what perhaps we will need from a food safety perspective and support from the state. So that is something, Justin, that we'll be adding to the action plan for next year. So I'm really glad that, she reached out and says, how can we support, CCDH and the food safety team? So we'll engage in those discussions. Additionally, we wanted to make sure that for this next legislative session, we will be tackling, the never-ending world of unpermitted food vendors. And so through not only food policy, but also through the CRFSE, we hope to work with the legislature to get some language in that would be reasonable and hopefully in concurrence with all of us here to be able to move forward on looking at CalCode a little differently with respect to food vending. And then we'll continue, of course, to meet on a monthly basis. We have met, like I say, it's been challenging. The TACs have actually done a lot of great work, and I have to take ownership. Some of them are stuck with me. So we did, the Central Valley TAC did update the public health reasons annex. That is currently being finalized. We have all the comments, and so I'm hoping that in the next month or so, we'll be able to publish that on the website. And then we also have several new guidelines that have been posted, and all of those now you will be able to find them on the CCDH website. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Justin, to introduce our next committee chair. Or I can take any questions if you'd like.
Thank you, Lisa. Jeff, are you going to go through the committees?
Yes, I will.
Okay,
All right, thank you, Lisa.
thank you.
With that, we'll go ahead and go over to the Solid Waste and Recovery Committee, Charles and Lars.
Morning, everybody. On behalf of Lars, I'm going to go ahead and give this presentation today. I'd first like to start off by saying we had quite the year. It started off with Christine Sosko being the committee chair, and Lars and I would really like to just show our appreciation for the ease of transition that Christine had when she decided to step down and have us participate. And I'd also like to reach out to Lars and say thank you for stepping up. I think having two chairs in this particular committee has worked out very well. Our mission initially that we first tackled was a name change due to the waste disposal, waste diversion, resource management, sustainability, and other various land use issues that are tied to solid waste. We just felt like solid waste was no longer appropriate. So now we are the Solid Waste and Resource and Recovery Committee. In all, we had about 5 meetings this year. We were able to appoint Jeffrey Marcel as the new EAC representative for our committee. We continued to coordinate with CalRecycle and we provided input and feedback to their supplemental environmental project program that they're implementing. We had a considerable amount of discussion and debate over biosolids. We continue with our commitment to coordinate with CalRecycle, CDFA, CalEPA, and the State Water Resources Control Board on the beneficial use, options for disposal, and possible revisions to the 503 standards. We supported a letter to CalRecycle, the State Water Board, CDFA, and CalEPA on sort of the next steps and what can we do with biosolids and what would be appropriate for land application. And with that, it would be amiss to not recognize Liz Posebon for her effort, dedication to our committee, as well as the issue with biosolids. She really she helped us prioritize policy discussions on related to the management of biosolids, and we were able to kick off a meeting on August 31st that I think went over well and kind of framed the discussion. We had a successful training series. SB 1383 was just such a big topic, and so we thought it was appropriate to do a training on coordinating local response and measuring success and waste diversion. And then we also continued up in the fall series to include a discussion on biosolids. So I think both programs were successful. For our priority action items for next year, we're going to continue to work with the implementation of SB 1383s in local jurisdictions. Continue with the biosolids management and best use resource recovery. We will also seek to sponsor or to reintroduce AB 2680 and or draft an alternative legislation to support a permitting of land application. And we'll continue our strong partnerships, of course, with CalRecycle, CDPH, the EAC, regional state roundtables, and regional wastewater tire roundtable, illegal dumping TAC, and other groups. And also, finally, we're going to complete ongoing review of the legislation, the CalRecycle rulemaking efforts. And with that, if Lars has anything to add, I'd like to send the mic to him. Other than that, that's our report. And if you have any questions.
Good, thanks, Charles.
Anything you want to add, Lars?
I think Charles covered it well. Thank you, and I appreciate all the support and the participation on the committee, and look forward to another exciting year dealing with solid waste and resource recovery issues in California.
All right, thank you, Charles and Lars. Any questions, comments for Charles or Lars before we move on to the next committee? Okay, thank you both. With that, we'll move to the Hazardous Materials Committee. Christine?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christine Lane. I am the committee chair for hazardous materials, and I am the CUPA Forum Board member at large representing CCDEH, which basically means I'm the CCDEH liaison to the CUPA Forum Board so that we stay connected for environmental health with CUPAs. So the Hazmat Committee works on CUPA programs as well as the local oversight program and other related issues such as source reduction, pollution prevention, climate change, and environmental justice as they relate to environmental health or CUPAs. And we have 16 members and organizational members with CUPA Forum Board and Cal EPA. And our committee members are from all 4 regions, so that is great. Our purpose or the activities with the committee is to engage with the CUPAs and to make sure we're representing the issues that CUPAs are encountering and bring them forward to the board. We also work closely with Cal EPA and the BDOs to make sure we're addressing any issues, especially related to our triennial evaluations. So that has been very productive, especially with Jason Bates now at the helm of Cal EPA's environmental or CUPA programs. We also are working to plan the 2022 CUPA Forum Board, CUPA conference, which will be virtual again. And that will be held in February and March. March. So it'll be 2 weeks, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays for those 2 weeks. And we'll offer, again, REHS credits and ICC credits. So I attend every monthly CUPA Forum Board meeting. I take notes, I turn around and I send that to the Hazmat Committee, as well as any updates or notifications, whether it's legislative or from the different departments within Cal EPA. And we, as a committee, had our first meeting in May of this year. And one of the topics that was still an issue are CUPA evaluations during a pandemic and how a lot of our staff have had to respond as disaster service workers or work elsewhere in response to the pandemic. And so again, just working closely with Jason and Cal EPA to see how we can make the evaluations a little more seamless and fair during those type of difficult, year with the pandemic. And I've attended the executive leadership meeting with Cal EPA and the CUPA Forum Board, UPAG meetings, and strategy meetings. Again, I take this information and I bring it to the Hazmat Committee. Our next meeting is to be determined. And Justin's already reviewed the legislative report and the action plan. That's all I have for you today.
All right, thank you, Christine. Any questions, comments for Christine? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next committee report, water and land use. Vicki?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Vicki Jones, Merced County Environmental Health Division Director, and I'm the chair for the committee. And I worked this year with our co-chair for the committee, Rob Koslevy. And I want to thank the committee, Justin and Cheryl, and the more than 50 members we've had on this committee. So I really appreciate everybody's input, feedback, conversation. We've had excellent discussions throughout the year. That's helped us as individuals in our own jurisdictions and, with consistency and problem solving. And so it's been an amazing committee to be a part of. So I really appreciate everybody's participation. This year, a large focus has been on, a lot of it's continued from last year, but we've had a lot of policy issues we've discussed related to drinking water, wastewater, land uses, on-site wastewater treatment systems. And along with that, this year especially, drought. Kind of beginning in the spring, it's been a very difficult year for drought conditions for the state in many areas, and the decreasing groundwater levels, severe drought. With that, additional groundwater contamination concerns, and increasing costs of implementation of programs such as LPA have all been concerns this year. And also we've implemented the new SB 200 water quality data submissions to the state. So jurisdictions have been providing data, water quality data from drinking water to the state so that they can include this information into their clearinghouse database. And also then they've been creating a risk aquifer map so that the public and property owners will have access to elements of concern such as nitrates and arsenic levels. We have had 3 active technical advisory committees during this time. The LPA ad hoc committee, the chairperson has been Stacy Harrington, and she will continue in that role for the next year, and I really appreciate her service in this position. She's done an amazing job. For on-site wastewater TAC, chairperson has been for this year Martha Wine. She's been amazing as well, and I know that they are having a meeting very soon and in the OTS TAC, and she's also very informative and helpful to this committee. And the water well construction TAC, we've had a few chairpersons to assist with this, David Alanis, Chris Hunley, and Megan Floyd, and I really appreciate all of their assistance. And David and Megan will continue in their roles in the next year, and I really thank them for all of their help. In the well program this year, the water well TAC members, a few of us have participated on the DWR discussions, panel discussions to provide input for the water well standards upcoming revise. And so in the spring 2021, there are some panels looking at certain sections of the water well standards. And then in the fall of this year, there will be additional panel discussions that we will participate in and provide input and feedback. It's been a very collaborative effort. And then we also have been, of course, focused on drought and very much taking an educational stance to drought information to make sure that our jurisdictions have been made aware of funding opportunities to help with emergency water, replacement wells, permit fees, hooking up to sewer. There are 8 counties in the Central Valley area that have the services provided by self-help enterprises. Other counties that may not be in the jurisdiction service area for self-help enterprises do have the ability to obtain funding from the state to create their own local programs to provide the similar services. And so I definitely recommend that jurisdictions take a look at that. It is a unique opportunity to be able to provide emergency water and replacement wells due to drought at this time to their residents and their property owners. In an effort to document out of water dry wells, the state has strongly requested that local jurisdictions, when we know of an out of water well or surface water system, that we enter that information into the mydrywell.water.ca.gov/report website so that they can understand where the drought is impacting California the most and can make sure that resources are adequately provided to those areas, looking at risk as how they, and also disadvantaged communities as how they distribute some of those funds and assistance. We continue to work closely together as a state in looking at when we are talking about the Power versus County of Stanislaus case and related to CEQA requirement when reviewing certain parts of well permitting. Not all well permits are ministerial, some are discretionary, especially when it comes to if there are no setbacks in code or law or water well standards for horizontal contamination sources to a proposed well, then those should be examined through a CEQA lens. And so it's encouraged for jurisdictions to meet with their councils to discuss their current permitting processes and if those are adequate to address those potential concerns. On-site wastewater program, we have been working with the Regional Water Quality Control Board on certain jurisdictions along the Highway 99 corridor that through the CV salts water quality information provided from groundwater, there are some areas that have elevated nitrates or have been reported as having elevated nitrates. And so some jurisdictions have received letters that have asked to take a look at those areas and make sure that we're evaluating whether or not those areas are currently covered by sewer or if they need additional water assessment to determine current conditions. Many 5-year water assessment reports for OTS will be due to the Regional Water Quality Control Board in the near future. So just to bring that to everyone's attention to make sure that you're checking your lamps and looking at when those will be due for you so that you can make sure that you're assessing the water quality conditions that are needed and information needed for that report. The LPA program, a large concern is the lack of funding to adequately assist jurisdictions who are LPA jurisdictions to continue to manage those programs. And so that is one of the continued actions that we have asked to, again, try to rerun the AB 2296, AB 402 bill, if we can find an author to see if we can have funding reestablished for those programs and jurisdictions. Biosolids, the Water and Land Committee has also been taking a secondary role in participating in meetings and discussions related to biosolids and our concerns about contaminants that may be contained within biosolids, and actually asking also if there's other uses that we could consider, such as using biosolids potentially as an energy source and maybe not a focus on the land application portion. So we are having discussions and asking for additional studies to be done to strengthen the requirements of the federal 503 standards that are part of the general order for biosolids with the state at this time. And so we'll continue to collaborate with the state entities, as Charles had mentioned earlier. And at this conference, we'll be having a water and kind of a focus on drought and what options are available and what options may not be as feasible to help address drought issues, because those do affect our programs directly. They affect our, needs for wells and how many permits we need to issue, how much staff time is needed to help process those. So this is very relevant to what we all have a concern with. And so Jim Blanky with Woodard and Kerr, and he's the senior principal and senior hydrogeologist with Woodard and Kerr, and will be providing that presentation on October 7th. Legislation, we did have 17 bills we reviewed. Out of that, there were 6 that we did take a position on. And so those, we did work with Justin on the legislation review. For the next action plan, once approved by the executive committee, we intend to really continue on with the activities we had in the last year's action plan. It all is still relevant and still continuing. The only one that we added was related to working with our Solid Waste and Resource Recovery Committee and state agencies to actively participate in collaboration related to land application of biosolids and our concerns. And that is the end of my report. Please let me know if you have any questions.
All right, thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
Any questions for Vicki? Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we'll go to the Environmental Health Information Technology Report. Jeff and Rick.
Hi, good morning, everybody. There's my wingman. So Rick and I are the 2 new kids on the block here. We were both put on the IT chair in July, and after Mike Ballet stepped down after he got his promotion. So we really haven't had a chance to have a committee meeting this year, and we're looking to get those started up with the same scheduling probably in December. So from the committee, we just went through the last one, so there's going to be some work that we need to do to verify some of the activities and issues that were previously noted. But most recently, one of our charges is that with a lot of the health departments moving into a different software from Envision Connect and moving into like Health Spaces or Amanda or whatever, we're going to be looking at kind kind of pulling these different software vendors and putting somewhat of a clearinghouse on CCDH website, so that way we can provide more information to all the members. So Rick and I recently met with Hedgerow Software. They wanted to have a talk with us about possible scholarships for sponsoring software packages for some of the rural counties. So we had that meeting 2 weeks ago, and there'll be another follow-up on that. So basically, we've had a few meetings. We're just trying to get the feel of it, get into the website, and hopefully we can get the committee back together back in December and go forward from there. And I don't know, Rick, do you have anything you want to add?
Nothing else. Good morning, everybody. Rick Encarnacion, co-chair for the IT committee. As what Jeff said, we're continuing on with what Michael Vallier left off, and that clearinghouse is one of our ideas to put together to inform the rest of the jurisdictions to hopefully make informed decisions, and as well as continuing on to ensure that the data works for us. And I think that's kind of like one of the main charges, in addition to supporting the website and improving communications through the website and the IT capacity of our organization. But that's it. If there's any questions, we're available.
Okay, thank you, Jeff and Rick. Any questions for either Jeff or Rick? Or someone wants to answer that?
I don't know who it is. I'm not answering it.
All right. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to, thank you both, Jeff and Rick. We'll move on to professional development and outreach. Freddie?
Good morning, everyone. It's great seeing all of you this morning. So professional development and outreach committee, basically Becky retired and I came on board. And I think as everybody has alluded, 2021 has been a little challenging, but one of the things that we were charged to do was to develop an onboarding training for our new directors and associates that comes on. As everyone is aware, we've gone through a lot of changes this couple of years with directors retiring and new ones coming in. So we were fortunate, CCDEH, CCDEH did gave us a seed money, $10,000 to kind of put this training together. So we just actually signed the contract to start filming, which we have, I know we're gonna use some of our retired directors have volunteered to be part of that process. So we start filming November 5th. And we hope to have that training put together and be done by hopefully beginning of next year. So we are excited about that. I think it's going to be great. And I think it's something that we can build on as we move forward. The other thing that we're looking at doing, and I think Jason will touch on it, is, we requesting establishing an ad hoc committee within this committee to kind of look into the REHS program. Specifically when it comes to counties or jurisdiction selecting a director that may not be having the REHS credential, and how do we support that, and how do we make sure that the right qualification is done? And in lieu of that also, how do we make sure that if it's not being followed, what needs to be done? So there's a conversation that we're having with CCDEH, but I think this is one area that with ad hoc, we can really dive into it and see what strategy and ideas that can be put forward, so we don't keep coming across a situation like this that it become an issue. And then the next big one that we're looking at coming up is the updating the CCDEH model local environmental program plan. As many directors may know, especially retired directors, and Justin, this was, I think, originally put together in 1980s and updated in 2011. And subsequent to that, multiple attempts have been made trying to update it, but it's a lot of work, and it really needs to be looked at. Codes have changed, new rules have come up, new legislation has been approved. So I think it's worth CCDEH and CCDEH's effort to really put some funding and resources behind it to go back and really do a deep dive into it and make it current. So that is something we're looking forward on doing in 2022. Hopefully we'll get people involved and we can collaborate also with, we're looking at the colleges and other jurisdictions to help us on that effort. And then lastly, what I want to add was, I think it's been shared already, was that training, the CCDEH training series, that the spring training series. Like everybody have said, it was very successful. I think was well received. So I just want to give a big shout out and special thank you. I know it's been said already, but to Justin, Cheryl, Jeff, Dave, Tim. I know Tim's, people work behind the scenes, and sometimes we don't appreciate all the work that goes behind the scenes to make these things happen. Also, Becky, who was the past chair for professional development, she's kind of got this whole ball rolling. So I want to acknowledge her. And then also want to thank, the presenters that did such a great job. Josh Dugas from San Bernardino County, Jamie, Amy from Kern County, Sarah Crossman from Riverside County, and then obviously Charles and Laz also on the solid waste. That was, I think, was great presentation. So I just want to thank everyone. We're looking forward to getting this onboarding training together, and then looking forward to getting that ad hoc together, and also working on the model local environmental health plan. So I just want to say thank you to everyone, and I will stop here and see anybody have questions.
All right, thank you, Freddie. Any questions for Freddie? Got a lot of work going on in that committee as well. So thank you very much, Freddie. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to emergency response. Marie?
Hi, everyone. Marie Wooden. All I can say, it's been a challenging year. That's an understatement. We were fortunate to even have meetings. I felt like we're just, dealing with the pandemic, drought issues, and wildfires. When we can think of, well, this year was bad, maybe next year will be better. And it just turns out to be even more horrific than the year before. So it's concurrent disasters. That is our challenge, concurrent disasters. In the Emergency Response Committee, we have 25 members representing all the regions. And we have Kelly PA, Jason Bateser, Assistant Secretary, John Elkins, Emergency Response. And we have CDPH, SADA Your Body, Environmental Health Disaster Response worker. Dr. Mark Starr has joined us, and Susan Atkins. She is the facilitator for the EOM Advisory Committee, which is the Emergency Operation Manual Advisory Committee for CDPH. So it's a well-rounded group, and I'm very grateful to them all to give us their perspective of what is going on with the state with disaster response, disaster emergencies. The mission of the Emergency Response Committee is we serve the members by providing policy-oriented direction, and that's when the members are participating in the EOM Advisory Committee, the FEP Committee with SADA, to help them have a voice, to make the voice of environmental health. As you know, some of these state agencies are not really familiar with our role in disaster response, so they're there to make sure our voice is heard. We also work to clarify local, state, and federal agency roles during a large-scale emergency event. We promote training opportunities, provide updates and improvements for the CCDEH Disaster Field Manual. We work with CDPH, Kelly PA, Coupa Forum Board, and other agencies to assist the development of statewide environmental health and Coupa-related mutual aid system. So I'm going to talk about 3 categories that our committee worked on. We worked on training. There was a lot of surveys that we participated in. Also the disaster training and team typing documents, and mutual aid resource requests. So I'm going to talk about the training first. So on October 14th, Jason Bateser and John Elkins will provide training called Emergency Response Today and Tomorrow. It's October the 14th. And they're going to be talking about current response efforts, including wildfire and drought responses. And then they were also going to focus on improved communication and coordination through the use of new technologies such as GIS. So that will be on October the 14th. This year, we also got involved with, his name is Burjesh Varma. Unfortunately, he's leaving. He was such a great resource. What he did is he was the Director of Medical and Health Coordinator for CCDEH. And he presented training for the committee members on the California Public Health and Medical System, which is made up of local health departments. And they oversee instant response teams, recovery, and preparedness. So whoever takes this place, we want to keep that relationship so we can keep our environmental health voice and role with that group. They also covered the nurses, ambulance teams, all the ESF8 resource aid. The other thing we got involved in, and I want to thank SADA Your Body, we became acquainted with the Bay Area Urban Area Security Initiative, or Bay Area UWASI, and we collaborated with this group to give input about the environmental health worker to the instructor. That she was creating this psychological first aid training that are in 4 modules for disaster response workers. So we showed up just in time to give the environmental health perspective role for disaster response, so she could kind of include that in her training. She is very well versed in her role, and she made the training modules available pro bono, meaning at no cost to anyone who wants to use them. So we want to put this as a resource on our CCDEH website. The surveys that we were involved in, there was a lot of them. One, we collaborated with CDPH, and that was to you directors to assess your survey training needs. Also, we did one for working with Cal EPA, because they wanted to know the potential mutual aid resources that were out there for numerous wildfires in California. We are also collaborating with NEHA on developing a nationwide survey, which they did. We were part of that group, me and SADA, identifying gaps for environmental health emergency response needs. And it was basically geared towards concurrent disasters. What are the gaps? And CDC, NEHA, and other state environmental health directors were engaged in discussions about challenges, resource needs related to environmental health's role, and concurrent emergency response disasters. The survey was developed and it was sent out to you, and it also was sent out to the public health departments. The other thing that we worked on, and this was something that Marcy and Wes worked on, and I found the documents when I first took this role, and I was like, oh my gosh, this thing still says draft. We need to finish this up. So what we did is we worked on revising the documents by gathering input from all the CCDH regions. The documents were reviewed by the CDPH disaster response section, where Burjesh worked, and they gave their input. It was also forwarded to the CDPH Advisory Emergency Response Operations Manual group, but because they're not meeting due to the pandemic, we had the facilitator look at them, and she just said, go ahead and use it. It looks good to her. So we've released that, but we're gonna put it on the website. Mutual aid resource requests. The ER committee, we continue to work on mutual aid requests for fire. So we have this little ad hoc committee, and Susan Atkins, the EOM facilitator, is kind of facilitating this group where we're meeting with the CUPA fire managers, CDPH on how do we request fire Coupa resource? How do we get this done? Because there's 4 distinct tracks with mutual aid, and these tracks don't talk well to one another. So we're trying to figure that out. What is the best pathway for that? Recommendations for future actions. We say we're still working on refining the ESF 8 and ESF 10 mutual aid requests during disasters. Work with Cal EPA and OES. I don't know if we'll ever get this, but can we clarify, what's going to happen regarding Cal Recycle, their involvement, OES, etc. The Coupa Forum Board proposal, they want to do, I'm being told they want to do a wildfire roundtable in 2022. So if they go forward with that, that's something we probably want to participate in. And then COVID-19, when this pandemic is over, we really need to have some type of action roundtable. What did we do? How do we improve if we get involved in a pandemic again? What did we learn from it? And then we continue to participate in the FEP coordinators meeting and share our EH role with disaster response. I really wanted to do this year, but we just kept getting slammed, all of us. I mean, we're doing committee meetings, and then, Lisa Medina goes, oh my gosh, I have a fire broken out my jurisdiction. I got to leave, so that's how our meetings kind of go. Jeff Warren came on, he's El Dorado, so he has the Caldor fire. I thought he was going to cry when he started talking about how surreal everything is in his jurisdiction and what he's facing. So we want to gather all these resource documents and put them so they're easy for you to obtain. And unfortunately, these fires are breaking out in these very rural jurisdictions where we have retired directors, stepping in through a KHA contract, and they're not familiar with MOAC. They're not familiar with these systems, how to get mutual aid. I think that the training and the how to put in a request, we have those documents what were very helpful to them. So what we're going to work on is trying to establish some type of training, hopefully like a recorded Zoom training meeting that you can just watch this, and it will tell you step by step, kind of a guidance. How do you request mutual aid? They call me for now. They're even calling Cheryl. What do I do? So we're helping them through it, but Sada and I really agree that we need to develop some type of training. So those are the needs that we want to go forward this next year. And that's the conclusion of my report.
All right, thank you, Marie. Any questions for Marie? Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll move on to the REHS committee report. Darrell and Freddie.
Okay. Hi, this is Darrell. Basically, I didn't have time to put up a report. Unfortunately, I had a little emergency to take care of yesterday. The REHS committee, we haven't really met a whole lot this past year. One of the main issues we're working on is REHS certification, and I think Freddie touched a little bit about it on his professional development. And the other question that we ran into last year was the online training, lab training that the schools were using. That's become an issue, and they're still looking into it. Freddie, is there anything else that you can come up with?
No, thank you, Darrell. I think that is the main one that we engaging with CDPH on. It's really the online lab acceptance, because as many of you are aware, you have trainees that wants to sit for the exam, and for some reason, based on the online classes that they took, no fault of their own, it's not recognized. And we thought, when we got involved, we thought this was something that can be rectified quickly, but it's not as simple as it sounds, because, each colleges are different, the way the class is structured, the way the lab is set up. So it's really an issue that really need to be looked at through CDPH and really go back to, what the statute says, because when the statute was developed or was put together, online classes wasn't even available at that point. But we also, especially with the pandemic and colleges going online, this is an issue that needs to be, to be addressed, not just, somebody went and took the class, but that may be the alternate offered to them. So CDPH have acknowledged that also, that is something that needs to be dealt with. And I think part of that is to do an outreach with the colleges. And the other issue that came up, which really kind of made everybody kind of step back to think about it, is, if you're on option 5 school, basically when you get certified, your transcript is not reviewed, right? It's because you've already gone there. So even if you took the class online, you're good. But if you're not, and you have to take additional classes and you have to show it, then it get reviewed and it may not meet that. So there's inequity in itself that needs to be looked at. So I think it's something that we're going to continue to see what's the best way to approach that. Currently, what CDPH is doing, they're doing case-by-case basis and reviewing it and see if it meets the rigor of what the lab requirement is, especially hands-on. But that issue, we just need to rectify. So it's an ongoing, and we'll report back what solution comes out of it. So and it's my part. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Freddie and Daryl. Any questions for Freddie or Daryl? Okay, hearing none, that concludes our policy committee reports. And with that, the next item is the adoption of bylaws and procedure manuals amendments, which there don't appear to be any.
Sorry, Jeff, did we cover community environmental health? Did I miss it?
Oh, you know what? My apologies. I skipped it. My apologies, Ron.
No problem, Jeff. No problem, Jeff.
My apologies. Blew it on my last shot through the agenda.
No problem.
Okay. Next, say the best for last. The next policy committee report, community environmental health. Ron.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, quickly. Since Elise retired, I have tried to reproduce what she had done with a lot of challenges, of course. But we have about 20 members, a lot of them new. And I do appreciate those who have joined, stepping up. All the regions are represented, but recruitment is going to be continuous. So I expect to start asking people to help out in certain situations. I want to particularly thank the tax because they do the work for the committee, and I run through their information and pass that by Justin. None of this happens without Justin. His input has been great and needed, particularly when it comes down to how we implement some of the things that we come up with. As far as those committees are concerned, those tax committees, we have Ryan Johnson down in San Diego, who's taking the lead on the Southern Cal Rec Health TAC. Also, we had a recent retirement with Amy Paquette, who was sort of the lead for the chair for the organized camp TAC. And Ryan has basically taken over the reins there until we get a replacement. And then for body art TAC with Candace, Candace is searching for someone to take over for her because of her challenges as well. So we're going to be recruiting for these TACs during the course of the year as well, because we've had a lot of challenges and a lot of people have taken over more responsibilities, and we understand that as well. Let's see. We actually got started with meetings earlier this year. It took some time for me to adjust to things because of the challenges in 2020. And so we met in March and in June. We just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we're scheduled to meet again in December. When it comes down to the focus, they're pretty much the same for the last couple of years. I mean, a lot of these things haven't been resolved yet to the point where we're satisfied. We're going to be looking at the Body Art Act some more to try to get some input. We have given some input that's being considered, and we will see. We need also a sponsor for that particular discipline, so we're going to search for that as well. And eventually we may have to go through CCDEH and KHA for that sponsorship. Let's see, last year, earlier in the year, as far as the conferences were concerned, we went to the virtual conference, of course. It was the Environment and Health Committee that kind of kicked things off with a couple of draft presentations, and they focused really on COVID and reopening as far as body art facilities are concerned, and our recreation facilities with pools and spas and our camps. So they kind of got things started. And as you can see, the quality of those presentations have really gone up since the early ones that my group was interested in helping out with. And then, of course, there are going to be some ongoing challenges and some ongoing things that we need to do. There was some progress made with AB 1066, of course, not without Justin and his influence on that one. And then we also were able to procure the grant from the Water Board for our posting at the different jurisdictions in their water bodies. So again, none of this happens without Justin and Cheryl's impact on what we do and what we say and how we do it, and really appreciate what Justin has done to help this particular committee out, and Cheryl's help as well. And that's pretty much it for now. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to try to entertain those.
All right, thank you, Ron. Any questions for Ron? Okay, hearing none, I believe that does now conclude our policy committee reports. With that, we'll move to elections. I think Cheryl's going to pull up. There we are. So we have our proposed. So what we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to go ahead and do it's going to be a survey that will go out. It'll be an instant read on this, read on the survey. If there's anyone that is, before we jump into that, if there's anyone that believes they should be added to or would like to be added to it, or would like to be part of the elections, please raise your hand. And let me quickly scan through that. I don't see any. Seeing none. Okay. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go to the polling, and this is how we're using this to, which is already kicked off for the elections for this coming year's committees and executive committee and chairs. Okay. So it looks like that. Overwhelmingly 96% approved of the proposed committee chairs and executive committee. With that, if I could get a motion to accept the polling results. If you can unmute yourself, and then I need a motion and a second.
Motion to approve. This is Jamie Agers.
Thank you, Jamie. Can I get a second?
Second, this is Daryl.
I think I got a second from either Heather or Daryl.
You can give it to Heather.
Okay, second from Heather. We had with that, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Yeah. 79 ayes. Any opposed? Okay. Any abstained? Okay, with that, it looks like we have our next year's elected executive committee body and chairs. Thank you all very much. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dave Conway, our new president, and his vision for 2022.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great, because I changed my microphone and I know you couldn't hear me earlier today. So good morning. I'd like to start off by saying thank you for your support. I look forward to leading CCDEH, the premier environmental health organization in the country this coming year. I've worked in the field of environmental health for 34 years. I started my career in environmental health as a sanitarian aide. Some of you don't even remember us being called sanitarians. While finishing my degree in environmental health, I worked as a sanitarian aide. In 1990, I joined the state local public health services section of CDPH, aka Contract Counties, as an REHS. I've represented Region 3 on the Food Safety Committee and Land Use Committees, moving through important issues like AB 885 and cottage foods, just to mention a couple. I represented CCDEH on the REHS committee, where as president of that committee, we worked with CDPH to create a pathway for reciprocity for out-of-state applicants in California. I've been director of environmental health for Mariposa County for 11 years now and continue to enjoy working in environmental health even through all of the challenges. In the world of vision, 2020 is what we strive to achieve. But I think we can all agree that we would just like to forget about 2020. But I'd like us to take a look back at all that we've achieved in this unprecedented time and build from it. While public health was dealt a hard blow, and as Justin mentioned earlier, we continue to be under assault. The principles we all hold dear will pull us through and make us stronger. I'm encouraged that even though many of our local programs are having funding challenges, CCDEH is seeing record numbers of new associates and new associate members joining, which is strengthening our organization. These associate members will be the leaders of the future. When I first came up with the theme for this year's conference, environmental public health in a post-COVID world, I thought, how are we going to show all the new and different ways of doing what we do now, that COVID is part of our lives. As the planning sessions moved along, and the various committees started talking about their training sessions, it became clearer and clearer to me that environmental health is continuing to do and will always continue to adapt and meet the needs of our local communities and protect the public health and the environment. Over the past 21 months, we've found new ways of continuing to meet our public health goals. And I'm excited to see us moving forward through the use of technology such as this Zoom meeting platform, while most of us would have preferred to hold our conference in person. We found a way to continue to hold this conference and to stay safe by doing so. As we move into 2022 and the world around us begins to open back up, we have a strategic plan that Justin will cover in a bit that will keep the important issues we face on a daily basis moving in the right direction. I look forward to working with our partners at CDPH on a number of public health issues and to ensure that the REHS program remains as strong, if not stronger, than it has always been. I look forward to working with our partners at the Water Board, Cal Recycle, and Cal EPA to create new legislation, obtain guidance, and implement the programs that continue to protect the almost 80 million residents and visitors to our state each year. I'd like to thank all of the committee members and the committee chair people that are continuing to do the hard work of CCDEH. Without you, we would not be the premier agency organization in the country. And I'd like to leave you with two quotes as I close. Many have said, if not me, who? If not now, when? And I think that applies to what we're doing. And Winston Churchill said, when going through hell, keep going. With that, I'll close and say thank you and move on to, oh, I lost it, to our next section in the agenda.
You got it, Dave. And on behalf of us all, thank you for stepping up and taking on this responsibility. It's really, really important to have the continuity and the expertise in the chair position of CCDEH or president position. So thank you. And I know I can speak for Cheryl and myself as your staffers. We look forward to working with you this year and your new committee. We have accomplished something really remarkable, and that's gone through about a 10-hour agenda in 1 hour and 35 minutes. So we don't have much time to go into any detail in this action plan. But what I want to assure everybody is this action plan has been drafted, this proposed plan has been drafted primarily with the input from your policy committee chairs. And many of these points have been raised as tasks that your policy chairs intend to take on. So this proposed draft, absent the in-person strategic planning that we usually have at our conference, is an effort to try and jumpstart the process of coming up with a plan for 2022, the rest of 21 and 22 for your executive committee and the whole organization. And just in terms of process, I want everybody that's still on the line to be assured that this isn't just a rubber stamp process. This is something that is a living document. We are going to add and delete and modify as we go through the year. But in the 26 years I've been with CCDEH, we've gone through this process of giving all the members of CCDEH an opportunity to provide their input as to what our priorities are. So we're absolutely not going to go through everyone here. But I want to reiterate, if there's anything here that you disagree with, you strongly agree with, you'd like to see modified, or you'd like to see amplified, please contact Dave or myself or any of the policy chairs so we can ensure that your input is included in this action plan for 21 and 22. That being said, this is a conceptual plan. It's obviously slim on details. The details are to be provided as we work through and ratify this with your executive committee. But the point of sharing this with you, as I say, is to not only get your input, but to give the executive committee the assurance that especially these highlighted issues here, which are either new or issues that we've worked on in the past that we want to focus on, that we have your general blessing and the membership at large agrees that this is where we should go. So, as I said, much of this has been discussed. A lot of this is follow-up, but there's just one actually quite new item that I wanted to stress, and then we will have a few minutes for comments on this, and also any members that wish to make a comment about the organization. That's in our bylaws. That's a legal requirement that this is an annual general meeting of a 501c3. So as members, we absolutely want to hear from you on any issue related to CCDEH after this. But without going through the details here, I just wanted to highlight the very first one. And I also want to acknowledge that Mark Starr has been reaching out to us. We do plan to have a much more extensive discussion about this in a more relaxed forum where we aren't under the gun for time. And we will obviously involve the REHS committee. We'll obviously involve CDPH, and we'll try and get a handle on how best to support and to defend the REHS program. So Dave and Freddie and others have spoken about that. And Mark Starr, as the head of environmental health in CDPH, has offered himself and his staff to work with us on that. But I just wanted to point to the one issue, and that is whether you would support considering creating an REHS program legal defense fund with KHA. It's something that we believe would be better done through KHAR because of its separation from you in your formal capacity, in your local government capacity. But if, and hopefully we don't get to this, but if there's a point of time when a local jurisdiction appoints an REHS director that does not have, and they don't intend to get, an REHS certification, at least many of us that have been discussing feel that we may need to take legal action. It is difficult for CDPH to take this action because there aren't explicit sanctions in statute. And I think that we have the right and maybe even the obligation to defend our profession and defend the law with the Legal Defense Fund. So that's one big issue here that is somewhat different from that. And it could also be done through creating an ad hoc committee. We create ad hoc committees that respond to the executive committees or answer to the executive committees and not the policy committees. And that elevates the status and also gives it a different sort of functioning than a regular policy committee. So I'm just highlighting those two, but you can look through the yellow highlighted areas and see the other things that we tend to do next year. And we will take this plan, if you don't have objections, we'll take this plan to Dave in the executive committee at the next meeting and start fleshing out the details. So thank you for your indulgence there. And always welcome input, as always, in any form, the regional committees, policy committees, everyone's welcome to attend the executive committee or just sending an email to any one of us. So thank you for that. So Dave, that's all I have.
All right, thanks. And with that, I'd again like to just say thank you. Provide my personal thanks to both Justin and Cheryl for all the hard work that they do to keep this organization moving and moving forward. As it was comforting to hear from Dr. Cork and the legislative members that they depend upon Justin's word and that they trust, and that's huge to me, that they trust what Justin brings to them on our behalf is right. And with that, and thank you, Justin, thank you, Cheryl, for everything you do. And with that, I will close the meeting, and we can all get on to other things.
Hey, thanks, everyone.